This is Greg Trolling with Maritime Reporter TV, and we're very pleased to be joined again by Peter Sand, the Chief Analyst of Xeneta, to discuss the always interesting container shipping sector. Peter, if we can, I'd like to start out with the most recent news coming out of Xeneta, your latest weekly container rate update. And I note and quote, Transatlantic spot meltdown puts shippers back in charge as carriers squeal. So can you please add some context and numbers to this dramatic headline?
Yeah, without doubt, I can definitely tell you why it's dramatic. It's because the development in the transatlantic front haul from North Europe into the US East Coast have seen quite a dramatic development. We've seen demand coming down by a double digit, but we've also seen the capacity deployed by carriers on that trade growing by double digit numbers. You'll find all the details on our blog as always, but that have, without question, resulted in a complete meltdown of rates. You may recall also from previous sessions that we had, Greg, that the transatlantic front haul was the one defying gravity for an extended period of time. But I must say now it's catching up with a vengeance. So all the carriers operating only in the spot market on the transatlantic are bleeding at the time being. So they can only hang on to whatever coverage they got left in the long-term contracts, as they now find spot below where they have ever been before, and where there's literally no room for anything but loss-making levels right now. Long-term contracts, they are still a little bit sticky, but they only sit $500 above where they used to do, in the range of $1,800-$1,900 per FEU. But I think shippers can only benefit from chilling on that trader's least and enjoying it while it lasts, because long-term contract rates will also find a gravital move towards those of the spot market.
Dramatic headlines aside, this does seem to be a particularly eventful time in the history of container shipping. When you look at the market holistically today, what do you see? And, is this just another market peak and swoon? Or are there indications that are larger, more substantial, and longer lasting market drivers are changing?
Nothing will ever be the same. And that is not a dramatic, catchy headline. That's just a fact of life. So I tend to talk about the next normal instead of getting back to normal, because there is no such thing as a normal market, not in container shipping, not in the maritime business at all. And global supply chains, I must say, they are also still struggling from the problems during COVID years. And then you have, say, a water shortage in the Panama Canal. But if we put the entirety of the market into perspective, I think what makes this downturn special is the fact that carriers arrive into this downturn market loaded with cash. So they may act more confident now than ever before. We can see that in terms of capacity management. The idle fleet sits around 250 TEU. That's way below our expectations of at least 1 million at this point in the down cycle. We're still only 8 months into, or soon 9 into 2023, with still more months and quarters to come with massively high deliveries from the Far Eastern new build yards. So the cards, at least fundamentally, are stacked against the carriers, but they seem to be more confident this time around. So I'll say the next normal is continuing to postpone itself. It is different in the way that we will never be at a point in time where there's been so much overcapacity in the market, but carriers are dealing with that in a very, very smooth way. And I think that is why we kind of, like, with the exception of the transatlantic, now see inbound rates into North America in particular on the spot basis going up by 50% over the past 2 months. So it's a crazy market, and that's why you, as always, need to monitor and analyze it faster than anything with the right data readily available, in order to not get caught out, and take the wake-up call when it's there. Because if you're too late, you may only lose 5 million on profits that you should not lose. So take the money and run, and you can only do so by being on top of your markets.
A couple of weeks ago, I had the pleasure of speaking to your colleague Emily Stausboll to discuss the market, and she noted that the rate collapse are coinciding with the simultaneous growth in the container shipping fleet. As you know as well as I, collapsing rates and additional capacity read good news for shippers, bad news for carriers in the very broad stroke. Many of the new ships coming out are in a vastly more efficient place. But big picture, how do you see this supply and demand dance playing out in the coming year or two?
Yeah, let me give you some numbers up front. Our expectations for global demand this year is down from last year. That's 2 years in a row, never seen before. To the extent of 1 to 2% when comparing the full years against one another. For the next year, 2024, our expectations are for demand to grow from that base to the extent of 2 to 3%, roughly on an annualized basis, right? So it's a little bit down this year and it's a little bit up next year. But you have to set that against a fleet which grows 6% this year in nominal term and 5.5% as we expected next year. So it's easy to see that there's a huge gap between demand and supply, and something that really needs to be managed here. So without doubt, what Emily alluded to is that there's something that doesn't really stack up in the market when we look at it. Rates should be at a complete meltdown level, all of them, if we looked only at the fundamentals. But I guess that's why guys like you and I still have a job, right, Greg? Because there's so much more to it on top of the brain dead nominal figures of fleet and the number of boxes that are moved, the distance they cover, the deployment efficiencies of the carriers, how they make use also of tonnage overaged in many ways into to smaller trades where they may actually turn around a small profit so they can avoid sending it directly to the demolition yards. So there are many factors to consider all the time when you're trying to scratch your head and find out what is going on here. Because right now, yeah, there is an overflow of data on many aspects, also including shipping. But I think the real trick behind getting your head around it is to know which data are the right one and which are not. So read between the lines also, in the sense when you can see carriers, for instance, announcing that they introduce a new route from Far East to South America via Europe, for instance. That is one smart way of deploying capacity inefficiently, but only when you do so as a carrier, you basically make yourself a stronger market. So watch out for some developments like that, because it may be where you can find the actual answers to the market movement up and down, because volatility will surely stick around, even though the fundamental direction seems to be pretty clear.
We would be remiss to not discuss the ongoing Panama disruption. What is going on today in the Panama Canal zone, and what are the projections for the coming months?
Right now, the Panama Canal is transiting ships at capacity. So we have 23 in total transiting the canal every day. That includes 10 Neo-Panamax ships in the new locks. So any uptake in demand from the current level will have to find another way to going through. It's not really a solution to bring more smaller loaders into to the canal, because, well, I mean, you still have to count to 32 and then it's a full stop. Container lines do have the priority of the Panama Canal, and they are also capable to a large extent of booking advanced, so they can transit more or less interrupted. I think if we have seen some of the data going out, some of the container ships had to wait at least a day and a half when they normally wait a few hours for transiting. So no one is left out here, and we all have heard about the capacity reduction with the draft restrictions of say 44 feet, which the authority now goes public saying that they are likely to stay in place for another 10 months. So carriers and shippers have a risk to manage here. If they fail to do so, you and I will only see higher prices and fewer options in the shelves when we go down shopping for Christmas goods. But I trust they are smart, that they are capable also of utilizing other services to get goods around. But still, I mean, it's crunch time, and Panama Canal is one of the catalysts also behind. For instance, the Far East to US Gulf Coast long-term contract rates, those data that Xeneta crowdsourced, they are now going up for the past month or so, as one of the very earliest indicators of also a squeeze in terms of more shippers wanting goods on that trade than the shippers, than the carriers actually offer. So long-term contract rates also now picking up since early August, with spot rates being up 50% over the past 2 months on that trade. So yeah, just a brief on Panama. I know we will talk so much more about that, not only later this year, but also as it gets really crunch time again next year.